My first visit to Aşıklı was in 2015 after a conversation with archaeologist Muge Ergun. Muge and I met in Çatalhöyük during summer 2007 when I was the artist in residence and she was working on site. Muge suggested that I visit Aşıklı. The way she described the place sounded hard to believe. However, when I arrived there, I realized how accurate her description was. Furthermore, there were 13 replicas of Neolithic homes to experiment with. In Çatalhöyük, there was only one. Living in the quarters with the team, I had the chance to get to know the archaeologists, watch their movements, and listen to their opinions. We shared breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the evenings seated under the porch looking at Hasan Dağ were full of poetry. Language was never a problem because we shared the same interest, the desire to enter the world of the people that inhabited that very same space more than 10,000 years ago. It was a revelation for me to watch those skillful professionals moving around the place, and I often imagined them as the ancient inhabitants of Aşıklı. The experimental house labeled Unit 8 had the egress on the northeastern corner, and therefore at about 4 in the afternoon, there was a rectangle of light that produced a screen where one could perform shadow animation. With the help of Derya Talay and Shagla Kaya, we managed to perform a puppet show that would have easily been performed by the ancient inhabitants. Every day there was something new that made me feel close to the prehistoric humans. A few days later, Elchin Ekmetski, sorry for my pronunciation, kindly offered to be my interpreter, and we visited 3 elderly women resident in Kizilkaya village next to Aşıklı. We asked them about childhood experiences, how they remembered their homes were lit, and how the sun entered the windows of their houses. They were puzzled by my questions, but tried to give me an answer. Their entire life had been dedicated to their children and families. Nothing else mattered. Only one was envious of her children and grandchildren because they could read and write. 2 of them were extremely well looked after. The third, now a widower, could not bear children, and therefore she had not been very well treated by her husband. Again, meeting them, it brought me closer to the people that inhabited Aşıklı. Another fascinating mystery that attracted me was the transition from circular houses to rectangular ones. You can see in the picture how the lower homes, therefore the oldest, are circular, and as time goes by, they become rectangular. What is the enigma behind this particular geometry? What could a rectangular home give to the people of Aşıklı that the circular one could not? This will be my next project, my new project, and I hope that to find other artists willing to invest time in further research on the topic. Getting up in the morning with the sound of the birds, goats, dogs, the sun rising, the openness of the landscape, and the powerful presence of Hasan Dağ was quite something. In the picture, it is 5 a.m. The team is getting ready for the van that will take them to the site. The call for prayer was the reliable daily alarm clock. Years earlier in Çatalhöyük, one night of full moon, I slept inside the experimental house. I pretended that the empty grave under my mat was not empty. I had weird dreams in which my ancestors came to visit me. There was a strong smell of dust and plaster as I lay on the floor. The room had human proportions, and it made me feel at ease. I wondered how would it feel sleeping there with the sound of the heavy rain outside or thunderstorm. I remembered how Ian Hodder had talked about the rooms being cluttered with objects, whereas Trevor Watkins, by the way, these 2 people are 2 archaeologists, I'm sure you know, considered that unlikely as the constant removal of belongings through the small egress would have been difficult if the walls were replastered and cleaned with the frequency that evidence shows. Our ancestors probably did not accumulate material goods to the degree that we do. One day, Hilal Gültekin joined me and Muge inside the experimental house in Çatalhöyük and we pretended to be at home cleaning, cooking, and chatting, as well as lighting the oven. It felt very natural, and it was interesting to see how quickly we learned to transfer embers from a fire we built outside into the oven to prevent smoke from filling the room. We kept the fire going without smoke for several hours. Although we did not, we could have cooked an entire meal. Later, Hilal started to sing, and Muge could not resist dancing to accompany her. That same day, with Hilal, we walked to the nearest village of Küçükköy. We were invited to tea by the family of one of the guards working in Çatalhöyük. His wife had a massive oven in the patio, built in a very similar way to those found in their ancient homes. There was a technique to operate it that she tried to explain, insisting that it was very easy, but it seemed extremely complicated to us. Back in Aşıklı, in this photo, we are seated under a parasol, drinking tea and enjoying a well-deserved break somewhere a few miles from the site. It was a day off for the team. How different would our gathering be from the gatherings of the people of Aşıklı? If we change our clothes, shares, etc., we would probably be quite similar. Muge can dance beautifully, and in the evening, when she did so, she looked like a goddess. While she was feeding the filtering tank with tons of gravel, she would always have a smile on her face, even under temperatures over 45 degrees. Her aim was to extract minute specimens that, under the microscope, would reveal valuable information for the team. Fatma Kalkan was discreet, quiet, reserved. She looked like an Egyptian princess. I filmed her clearing the skeleton of a child. It was done with so much care that you would have thought that it was her own child. Sarah Yelovza was equally beautiful. Modern and efficient, her attention fixed totally on what she was doing. Serious but kind and gentle. Melis Duru reminded me of a stream of colorful butterflies. Delicate, yet so very strong. Ready to solve any problem, to handle any situation. I do not have much time to add more descriptions, but I must mention Güneş Duru, co-director of the excavation, whose talents as a rock musician and singer are evident all over the site. He combines his capacity as an archaeologist with his musical skills, and I sensed it strongly in the silence of the experimental houses that he built. Mihriban Özbaşaran, the director of the excavation, has a passion for animals, plants, and flowers. Along with the mammoth job of running the excavation, she maintains the place as if it was her back garden, and there is always a new dog as part of the team. Mihriban invited me to visit Aşıklı again in 2017, but this time I brought with me Blanca Moreno, a Colombian painter who has dedicated most of her life to drawing and painting the forest, the rivers, and the depths of the Colombian Amazons. Her relationship with the landscape and the creatures that inhabit the forest, it is quite unique. I was certain that the geography of Anatolia would have an impact on her, and you can see the result in the images painted. I hear it say iron oxide, but it's not. It's painted with ink on the wonderful heights shown in our lines of sight exhibition. Unfortunately, COVID prevented her from visiting Istanbul this time, but you can find her work on this online page. You can see both of us in this picture watching the sunset in Aşıklı, one of those magical evenings after dinner. During our stay, we were also living in the quarters with the team, and we both had the chance to talk to the archaeologists and learn about their thoughts and knowledge. All of it was invested in our work. Those conversations brought to us new material and ideas that would later be developed in the studio. Because the egress of the homes is on the roofs of the buildings, and it is placed at different cardinal directions, the angle of the beam of light differs in each unit. The variation is intentional and allows for experimentation, as the archaeologists do not know for sure where exactly it was placed in the actual homes. I filmed the journey of the light traveling inside the different homes from morning till dusk. My aim was to give the viewer a sense of the passing of time that transcends the millennia that separate us from the inhabitants of Aşıklı. While I was filming, it was not difficult to imagine a woman like myself 10 millennia ago, seated on the floor of the house, watching the light move slowly across, creating a semicircle and disappearing at dusk. Watching the beams of light move slowly down the walls, across the floor and up again, I was made very much aware of the immateriality of time and how the existence of any living creature is limited to a brief duration of time. Yet, the humanity of prehistoric people is beyond question. The primate or primates that buried the three bodies found in Atapuerca, dating from almost 500,000 years ago, must have felt empathy, respect, or love to perform such action. The people of Aşıklı were in tune with nature and were extremely sophisticated. Hardly any remains of their art has yet been found, and we do not know if, like Muge and Hilal, they sang and danced spontaneously or spoke poetry when Hassan Dagh appeared and disappeared behind the clouds. I believe humankind are at a crossroads, and that for our continued existence, we need more than ever to look for clues in those that have helped keep the human species going up till now. The final result of my studies was a video in which the different tracks of light moving across were speeded up so that the viewer could see the complete sequence. The video was to be projected in the main wall of a cubicle, replicating the exact dimensions of one of the experimental houses in Aşıklı. What you can see at Kesuda Hammam is just a video of as the cubicle could not be built. Through the speakers, you can hear the sound of the river flowing and birds and other morning creatures singing. I imagine that the sounds of the Melendez River that flows next to the excavation to this day was not very different from my recording. In 2019, I invited two English colleagues to join me at the excavation, Dillwyn Smith and Anita Taylor. They are here in the panel and they can tell you firsthand about their experiences. Unfortunately, COVID has imposed limitations on all of us, but the flame is alive and we must proceed. My conclusion is that the dialogue that we have started between the archaeologists and artists is just the beginning. The exhibition speaks for itself. Art can offer dimensions that science does not have, and vice versa. Recent conversations with the Turkish artists proved to me further that such collaboration is extremely valuable, and I hope to extend the project to artists and archaeologists of other countries. Thank you very much.
I have nothing written down. I mean, the offer to come to Aşıklı, I was reticent, I have to admit. I was reticent, I wasn't sure. Eva's an old friend, and I wasn't sure why I was coming really, apart to support her in her idea. And arriving there and witnessing the landscape and the way the archaeologists work was interesting for the first few days. And I didn't do very much, I just observed. But what I packed with me in my one bag was some Japanese paper, a mulberry paper, a very fine but very strong paper, and a couple of paintbrushes. I didn't bring paint. I wasn't sure. I just thought something would happen. The site, when was it? August. It was August, and on site there were this yellow flower that was blooming everywhere, and I didn't take much notice first of all, and I became interested in the fact that Hassan Dagh had exploded at some point. I wasn't sure when, and that obsidian was all over the place. We were picking bits up and getting very excited about it. And then it occurred to me that I could begin to relate just being in the landscape. The work would come from that, and it's almost as though, yes, there is some relationship to people being in the same landscape, 10,500 years ago, but also, millions of years before that too. And I asked at one time, Muga about this plant, which she said was verbascum, and I asked her at one lunchtime, could she ask these lovely ladies who were cooking the food for us, what did they know about the plant? And they said, well, it came back that it's been used as a dye, and I thought, okay, I'm an artist. It's paint, dye is paint, it's stain. I can work with that. So I spent the following most of the day out picking little petals off these flowers, and I got a big bag full of it. The view on the right, on the left, and then I cooked it. I borrowed a tin and a cooker from these guys, and made a dye. And that was, the smell of the dye was so clean. It was instantly, I kind of recognized it had some healing property. I didn't know what. I felt like it was good for you. And I then painted some papers with it, and the paper actually took the stain beautifully. The paper didn't have a varnish on it, so the dye could infuse into the fibers. And I tried three kinds. I painted one set of papers once, one set twice, and one set 3 times. And of course, the 3 times it was much richer and much deeper. I hung them on the line there, out in the Aşıklı, and they began to play, they began to work, and some energy came from that. In the back of my mind, I was thinking obsidian, and we gathered a piece of obsidian. We went to look at in the science block, where there was a lump of obsidian the size of 2 heads, and held that. Yeah, this is magical. And of course, we as artists, we were discussing the use of obsidian in the arts as mirrors in the 19th century, but artists before that too in Italy were using obsidian mirrors to observe their work. They hold them up and looking at giving them some space really to look at their work. And these kind of things, they're interesting. So obsidian's good. It also has in more research. When I was back in England, it led to it was used in ceremonial occasions, and again, like many stones, it has a power, for some people. So I was thinking we were going to go back to Aşıklı in 2020 and 2021, and I would collect the dye and make the paper and make this work. And I was going to use ladders, because ladders were used not only by the archaeologists as they dug through the 5 layers? 5 or 6 layers. They are used to move up and down, so they're tangible and they're functional, and I enjoyed that fact. But also that I was told that in the houses, as Eva said, when they became square, there's no evidence of doorways, so they most probably have got in with ladders. So I thought, okay, so there's the double use of ladders. I started placing the papers onto ladders, and I thought when I come back in the following year, in 2020, I would pursue that a bit further, and again in 2021, and then we'd have the project for 22. But of course, we couldn't come back, so there was a bit of a dilemma. Could you show the next slide, please? So here's the papers flying in the wind, and it became like, well, I've never done installation work, and I've begun to sort of play with putting pieces of work in the landscape when I went to visit Skellig Michael, which is on the west coast of Ireland, and it's a kind of 6th century extraordinary place with beehive huts which still stand. You have to take the boat out onto it. And so I thought, I'd been there just before I'd come, and so I thought, I'll just, it seemed obvious that this was a beautiful thing, these colours moving in the landscape. And on the right-hand side is the piece I've got showing at the moment in the show in the Haman, and it's a plate of made with obsidian. It's the center, left-right center slice of a brain. As I have data because I had been artist in residence at the Queen Square Brain Bank, and my mother had died with Alzheimer's, and I'd made some work about that, and I subsequently was offered to come and respond to the brain bank and brains. So I was able to scan the full brain, a fresh brain which had come in. They're all in Britain. They're all donated anonymously, and as the pathologist sliced the brain, this is the center slice, as I said. It scanned on each side, and I thought, well, you're making a piece of art. I'm not a scientist, so we scaled it up a bit, and I made some prints from it, and I'd made some prints on silver leaf with it, and it's a deep emboss. And then for this project, when I realized we cannot use obsidian here from Turkey, I found that I could buy some in America that's ground, and I had it sent over, and we made this. We made a cast from the original plate and cast this obsidian in a resin. It seems to, I don't know, it resonates. I've hung it in a corner, and that has two significant things, because it's a black plate, unless the light's on it, which looks like a TV screen, which we all have in our houses these days, a black plate hanging on a wall. But also it's in the corner, and cheekily, it's a bit like what happened when Malevich in the early 20th century in Russia, a forerunner of abstraction in Russia and in the world. He made a piece called Black Square, which is very famous, and he made an exhibition in a room with these different square paintings. But the black square he put up in the corner, high in the corner, the place where the icon normally sits, and he left it there. So in a way, I like the cheeky bit. Well, let's put it on this angle, not flat on the wall. Yeah. Can we see the next slide, please? So here's installation, the Bascom ladders. As you go into the room, there is the smell of the Bascom. And as I said, the Bascom is a healing plant. And it's gone from Anatolia, but it's out in America, it's out in East Asia, and it's all over the place. And even when I found I couldn't come back, I begged my friends when they were walking in British countryside, if they found it, would they let me know? And I got a call back within 5 minutes with a photograph of a Bascom plant. They grow like more than 2 meters tall. And I went straight there. I went 3 times to collect the petals from them, but I also took the root and I took the leaves and kept them separately and made these different batches. So they're slight different colors. And I called the project like Roots for the root of the plant, Bloom for the bloom of the petals, and Boom because the volcano exploded and gave me another element to work with. The Bascom, as I say, is being used medicinally in all different cultures, and it's been used fascinatingly in more or less the same way. It's very good for your lungs. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's used. The Romans used it to dye their hair when they were here. The Romans also used the leaves as the leaves are very thick and spongy, and they used to keep their feet warm in their moccasins. It's surprisingly one of the things which goes across cultures. It's very good for hemorrhoids. You make a pack of the leaf, make it warm, and you put it on your hemorrhoids. They're still using it today. So it has all these fantastic herbs. So I thought it's great to touch that. I've made some tea with it, which I'm going to give my guests here. Not my guests, your guests. I've made a herbal tea from the Bascom. And you will see the colour. This is how the dye of the paper came.
Thank you.
We wait 15 minutes, see if you die, and then
that'll be after I've spoken.
Thank you.
Thank you.
if I had more cups, I'd give you some. Maybe after.
Cheers.
Chin chin.
Chin chin, do it.
As Francis Bacon used to say, cheerio. Thank you.
Cheerio.